Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. On behalf of the PP21 Organizing Committee, we welcome you to join the PP21 Forum on Rural and Indigenous Community Building in Asia. It is a part of Asia Pacific Social Forum 2022, which is also an Asia Mobilizing for Mexico World Social Forum 2022 in coming May. We provide English-Chinese interpretation. You can choose any interpretation at the bottom of the computer screen. We would like to thank today's interpreters, Huang Xiaomei and Liang Ying. May I first introduce the co-moderators for today's sections. My name is Tsui, Margaret Jade. I am an associate professor at the Institute of Rural Reconstruction of China, Southwest University. I am board member of Asian Regional Exchange for New Alternatives and a founding member of Global University for Sustainability. I have been actively involved in the rural reconstruction movement in China since 2000. Professor Lau Qin-chi has taught in Lingnan University for 35 years. First in translation and then in cultural studies. She is currently coordinator of the program on Cultures of Sustainability, Center for Cultural Research and Development, Lingnan University. She is also director of the executive team of the Global University for Sustainability. She has been involved in the rural reconstruction movement in China for over 2 decades. She is also board member of Peace Women across the globe. PP21 means the People's Plan for the 21st Century, People's Declaration like Minamata Declaration of 1989, Margaret Declaration of 1992, and Rajadamont Pledge of 1992, and Sagarmatha Declaration of 1996 remind us to take victims of industrialization and modernization into serious consideration, to reflect on ecological sustainability and to build up people's alliance between and among Asian, African, and Latin American countries. The PP21 Organizing Committee reconnects with PP21 partners over the years, invite the younger generation to participate in writing or helping to write the experience of communities, share reviews and prospects for alternatives, and start the regeneration of PP21 process in building Alliance of Hope. On December 15 in 2021, we organized PP21 Pre-Forum on Rural and Indigenous Community Building in Asia, in which we examine and discuss some community experience from China, Japan, and Thailand. For the details, you can see the links in the chat room. I will copy the links later to watch the previous videos about PP21 and also download the files about the cases of community experience. Now I will play a Chinese song, the Love Hometown Song. Since 2012, the new rural reconstruction movement in China has initiated a nationwide campaign of devotion to homeland, which identifies and recognizes local people who are engaged into community regeneration and cultural sustainability in rural areas.
在呼唤，多么亲近，多么温暖，滋润我心田。
走在路上，这么多年，历经世事多变迁。稻麦飘香，我心飞扬，等于天地间。爱是一束光，将我心照亮。故乡是一条河，源远流长。一山一水长四枝，一粥一饭何敢忘。心之所系，命之所在，就是故乡。
清清的河，翠翠的山，大地母亲在呼唤，多么亲近，多么温暖，滋润我心田。
走在路上，这么多年，历经世事多变迁。稻麦飘香，我心飞扬，等于天地间。爱是一束光，将我心照亮。故乡是一条河，源远流长。一山一水长四枝，一粥一饭何敢忘。心之所系，命之所在，就是故乡。爱是一束光，将我心照亮。故乡是一条河，源远流长。一山一水长四枝，一粥一饭何敢忘。心之所系，命之所在，就是故乡。心之所系，命之所在，就是故乡。
In today's section, we continue to discuss the current situation of rural and indigenous communities in different Asian countries, what has been the major challenges and what alternative ways they are practicing dealing with the difficulties. The first speaker, Dr. Yang Xiaohui, is core member of the new rural reconstruction movement in China. He is senior researcher with the program on cultures of sustainability, Center for Cultural Research and Development in Lingnan University. He is also executive director of Green Grant Eco Tech Center in Beijing and director of the Green Ground Alliance of Social Enterprise in China. He will speak in Chinese, so please choose English interpretation. Dr. Yan Xiaohui, please.
Hello, Tsui and Jade and everyone, every teacher, every friends. Good afternoon. So I would be speaking Chinese. It is a great honor to attend this meeting and have the opportunity to share. My name is Xiaohui Yang and I'm from China. The work I participate in is called Rural Reconstruction Movement. Maybe you use different concepts in different places, but I believe we have common work. We have this common ground, just like the theme of today's meeting. As far as rural construction movement is concerned in China, it has at least more than 100 years of history. I have been involved in such practice for nearly 20 years since I was in college. And this practice included the issues of ecological protection and environmental pollution. For example, I once led a team to carry out an investigation on the pollution of the Weihe River. I crossed 3 provinces and walked through and visited hundreds of villages along the Weihe River. It was such a rich and important experience for me. And after graduation, I joined a YC James Yan Rural Construction College in Hebei Province. This is a farmer school founded by my teachers Jianzhi and Wen Tiejun, Professor Wen. And this is a place where we taught farmers from all over the country to learn ecological agricultural technique and help them to build ecological eco-houses with local materials and low emission. And the villagers can carry out all this work themselves. Also, we build compost toilets, which has been very popular, but we did it like at that time. And we help farmers everywhere to establish mutual aid cooperative. And we also mobilize college students to come to the countryside to support rural development. And later, we moved to Beijing to carry out ecological agriculture project called Little Donkey Farm, which is named after the donkey we had in the rural construction college. And the farm has been in operation for 14 years. And every year, a large number of volunteers and interns come to the farm to learn. And now many people had returned to their hometown to carry out farming-related activities. And it is also on this farm that we launched a nationwide campaign to mobilize citizens to return home, and we call it home-loving movement. We hope to mobilize these people to reflect on urbanization and to turn more attention from development to hometown and environment. And later, my college and I united like 10 organizations to engage in rural reconstruction. And we form an alliance called Green Ground Alliance of Social Enterprise. We not only continue to take root in different lands and carry out rural construction, but we also exchange good ideas and experiences with followers with the help of new media, social medias. And in the course of more than 10 years of researching, practicing, and also under the help of Jianzhi, Professor Liu, we have also maintained long-term exchanges with different communities across the globe, especially in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. And she has led us to visit many countries and regions. And all these experiences allowed us to learn from the practices of various indigenous communities. And also it helped us to reflect on our own work. Later, we launched the South-South Forum to promote more exchanges of ideas in the South. And then we founded Global University for Sustainability. And we invited more than 200 scholars from around the world to join us. So we can spread all these ideas to our Chinese citizens. And the Global University for Sustainability and has like 4 million fans in our social media here. So I want to share 2 points with you, concluding all my work experience. So firstly, how can we break through the national framework and such and a very narrow political discourse, and to seek different connections that have been cut by national borders, but also indigenous people are connected. And at the last year's South-South Forum, our theme is the politics of hope. And you know that since the breakout of the pandemic, many people in the world have lost the hope to live. And especially facing this class differential in a very deep capitalist system. And not only it has become more and more difficult to survive, but like 4 million people have unfortunately lost their life. Know that politics is a process in which a group of people connect together to establish some specific relationship and produce a certain community. So in the South, the exchange of different experience and this connection, facing all kinds of crises together, all kinds of crises produced by like modernization, yet they cannot be solved by modernization. So today's the theme is rural construction in Asia. So it is a very good attempt for us to find common ground and form connection among different countries and regions. So what we are facing in a very kind of dilemma is that when in one country the poor people, when they die, and in other country, those poor are kind of and when in one country the indigenous group are living a little better, they will laugh at other countries' indigenous group who seems to be a little more backward. And I would say all this is because the global competition framework of modern nation state situation that has redefined our identity. And second, we need to create a new class discourse to build a new subject of resistance. Like so we often criticize like social movements have less and less impact, but as participants we also feel like more and more powerless because the evolution of global capitalism has gradually absorbed and used the old discourse. Or in other words, the discourse of the old social movement has become more and more difficult to deal with the capitalist system under the new condition and struggle. For example, we have carried out the work of rural construction for 20 years. Many young people return to their home, yet they carry out this such like an entrepreneur dream to start a business. So they take the countryside, the rural area, as an object of resources and want to invest and make a fortune out of the rural area. And in such cases, instead of helping the rural area, the countryside, they form a competitive or even hostile relationship with the farmer. Like they hire the farmer and they rent the land from the farmer, like in such relationship. And such a subject has changed. So secondly, my point is that the capitalist mode of exploitation has undergone great changes. Like the old mode and have been imposed on new condition. So in the past, the exploitation of farmers by landlord, mainly depending on the possession of land to kind of to get the rent out of the farmers. But later, industrialization developed and capitalists started to exploit laborers. But nowadays, the development of financial capitalism and virtual economy rule the world through debt. And the landless farmers and the working classes are the new, like, and nowadays, even though farmers in China, they have lands, but they don't have any motivation to work on the land. Yet, on the other side, industrialization are facing more and more difficulties, and factory workers, and also they lose their job, and the factory owners cannot maintain it. And more of them are more and more entangled or in kind of in such a difficult condition with debt. And everyone is in debt. Because before that is the relationship between landlord and farmers. And later it turned into like factory owners or the employer and employee. So can we really set this new subject to fight against the capitalists? And capitalism produce more and more useless things. They use products with no use value in exchange for various basic conditions on which we relied for survival, such as clean land, clean water, air, and food. And we have, in order to buy those products, we have to be in debt. So the virtual world and useless product attracts us more and more. We have to, without any choices, to fight against them. How can we find the space to resist? So we can only firmly grasp various conditions related to our survival in the real world, like those that we have the use values or any production that could produce like goods. So that with all this foundation, we can like be more and more be able to self-reliant, so that we can live together. Can we build conditions for such good living? So therefore, I also respond to my first point. That is, people who share a common situation can break the restriction of a nation state. And we can form a new identity. Like we are all like people on the ground. Or people are subjected by capitalist system. Or we can work to produce goods without being in debt. Or we can use the internet, the virtual environment to create new connection. So this is how I understand the new task facing or rural construction is facing the new task.
Thank you very much for Dr. Yan's presentation. He points out the questions of debt and also financial capitalism. And our next speaker is from Kerala, India. Jaisreekumar is a cultural anthropologist from Kerala, India. He received his MA in anthropology from University of Madras and MPhil from Pondicherry Central University. As an anthropologist, Jaisreekumar is specialized on the cultural transition and resource alienation of tribal communities. He currently works with Totem Resource Center. Totem is a non-governmental, not-for-profit organization based at Earkanna district of Kerala. The organization works for the protection and conservation of traditional knowledge, medicine, art, culture, and heritage of indigenous and minority groups. Please.
Hello, everyone. Thanks to the organizers of People's Plan for the 21st Century Forum on Rural and Indigenous Community Building for inviting me to present about the issues and concerns of Indigenous community of Kerala. Here I am speaking on the title, Living in the Changing World, Life of Indigenous Communities of Kerala. I am speaking on my experience in the field of Wayanad district for the last 10 years. Wayanad is one of the important tribal belts of Kerala. It is also one of the most neglected and most backward district of Kerala, though it has great economic potentialities. Apart from the peculiar geographical features and pleasant climate of the area, the uniqueness of Wayanad is the highest proportion of tribal population in the state. There are 8 indigenous communities living in Wayanad, namely Kattunaikar, Ponniah, Adiyar, Kurichir, Mullukurumar, Vettakurumar, Tachanadan Moopan, and Wayanadan Kada. Main source of livelihood of Kattunaikar is based on the forest, while Kurichir and Mullukurumar are agriculturists. Ponniah and Adiyar are wage laborers. Here I am speaking about how these groups are coping up with the changing global scenario by emphasizing on three areas, namely education, agriculture, and tourism. The indigenous communities of India are the oldest inhabitants of the country. For millennia, tribal societies have been subjugated. Their land was taken away. They were pushed further into hills and wilds. And they were forced to work for the oppressors, often without or meager payment. Today, tribal groups require special attention from the government. Government planners see education as indispensable for helping tribal people cope up with the national integration. Education will also determine their prosperity, success, security in life. The tribes which remain either deprived or negligent towards education will suffer the consequence. The right to education is a fundamental right of an individual enshrined to the Constitution of India to provide free and compulsory education of children up to the age of 14. As tribal students come from a different and peculiar background, the school dropout rate is very high among the segment of students when compared to those from other segments of the population. As per the available reports, the education level of tribal students is exceptionally low, and the number of those who acquire higher education is low too when compared to non-tribal. In the backdrop of the COVID-19 pandemic situation, the education system is facing an unprecedented crisis, and digital divide among the communities makes things worse. Based on this situation, the governments introduced many methods to continue the academic activities through the online platforms. But in these tribal hamlets, they do not have even a mobile and internet coverage, and some of them do not have even electricity. Here, despite the state's achievements in the education sector, the Kerala, the poor socio-political condition of marginalized groups keeps them out of the mainstream, with the pandemic making the situation worse. We cannot discuss education of indigenous communities without mentioning the mother language issue. The traditional wisdom is an integral part of tribal cultural heritage. It is important to protect the mother language of each community, to preserve, protect, and promote the rich tribal heritage, including art and artifacts, handicrafts, tribal medicines, traditional medicinal practices, etc. Many tribes still speak their language. While adult males are often bilingual, the women and children speak tribal dialects almost exclusively. Yet, a tribal child on entering school is suddenly expected to understand the state language. Children cannot understand the teacher, let alone answer questions. Many teachers assume that tribal students are slow, even if the teachers are sympathetic. Overcoming this language barrier requires a great deal of effort. It would help considerably if tribal groups were taught during their first years in schools in their tribal language, that means their mother language. They could then be gradually encouraged to learn the regional language. The aboriginal languages of tribal communities are dying. The death of a language means the loss of an entire knowledge system of the life and culture of its people. The government must take measures to preserve and encourage the use of these tribal languages, arts, and crafts, and promote efforts to create a multilingual curriculum. It is unfortunate that there is no formal proposal to integrate traditional wisdom with educational methods in this country. Though some of the educational institutions are trying to develop educational aids in tribal languages. One of such schools is GUPS Bawali, one of the schools where I am working. And they are trying to make text and by translating to tribal languages, even they do not have a script. They use this mainstream language, but a student can understand a little bit more. The education schedule, the school year, daily classes and holidays, and it's all matters. And the educational schedule is organized with little understanding of tribal cultures. Tribal festivals and celebrations and the seasonal pursuit of agriculture and gathering are not taken into consideration during the planning of educational timetables. All too often, teachers hold classes as they would in cities or towns, ignoring the daily or seasonal habits of tribal students. The approach was limited to the teaching aids and readers, while components of teacher training, regular academic follow-up, and evaluation were not included. Without an adequate grounding in the theoretical perspective of language and literacy, learning and with no teacher preparation, these experiments were bound to fail, even in Bawali. Tribal leadership has been surveilled. Tribal leadership has been subverted by outside influence and agencies such as the police, the courts, and political parties. In the case of political parties, tribal leaders are often manipulated for the block of votes they can deliver rather than encouraged to take the initiatives of leading their people to find locally derived solutions to local problems. As a result, village autonomy was destroyed, law and order has deteriorated, and respect for authority was lost. Tribal leaders began to exploit their own people politically, socially, and economically. Tribal students, even while they are receiving their education, they must be trained to dedicate their service of their people. They must help to develop their pupil inner resolve to resist exploitation and to safeguard their own rights. And one another issue is about the climate change. And the agriculture sector is one of the major sector which is affected by climate change. The place where I am residing, where I am working, Wayanad, it is a hilly area, it is a hill district on the Western Ghats, which is known for tourism and large-scale cash crops production. And it is one of the major places of South India, where the impact of climate change and global warming are acutely felt. The floods and landslides which occurred in 2018 and 2019 have ruined a major portion of Wayanad, where a complete recovery and rehabilitation continue to remain a mirage. Unscientific monocropping, mindless tourism, and real estate business had already ruined Wayanad, and now climate change is completing the cycle of destruction. Among the farmers in Wayanad, there is an old tale that involves both the representatives of British in East India Company and Samurin, the king of Kozhikode, The then ruler of northern Kerala, Samurin, to which Wayanad belonged. When the company officials attempted to take away pepper vines from Wayanad to replant their native land, Samurin said to have told to the officials that only the wine they can take away, not the climate. He was indicating about the peculiar climate situation of Wayanad with equal amounts of rain and shine that facilitate the easy growth of pepper. In Wayanad, agriculture has always been climate dependent. Even small changes in soil temperature and moisture levels can adversely affect the yield. In the last 2 years, the production of cash crops such as pepper, tea, coffee, Earkanna, and cardamom in Wayanad have taken a major hit. Then there are many other issues such as wild human conflict, unscientific practices of pesticide usage, landslides. So the farmers are still trying to cope up these issues. One of such farmer is Tsui Raman. Paddy cultivation has occupied a pride of place in Kerala. Unending, lush green paddy fields are a sight of eyes. But cultivation has been on the decline at an alarming rate. The state has already lost more than 70% of its paddy fields in the last 30 years. In the district Wayanad, once produced 160 varieties of paddy. These indigenous farmers, they cultivated these paddy varieties. But 55 of those are now extinct. Tsui Raman is one of among the few indigenous farmers who cultivate paddy. He received National Plant Genome Savior Award, and he resisted moving to chemical-based farming and using hybrid seed, despite being urged by friends and colleagues. Chemicals, he says, will kill the biodiversity in his field. All of Raman seeds are stored in bamboo containers. Before sowing, Raman spread out the seeds in the sun for about 10 days. This, he said, makes them resistant to extreme weather conditions. He says seeds cannot be sold because it is love and care rather than a commodity. Every year he distributes about 150 kg seeds to 250 farmers across the country. And Raman started farming as a child in his childhood with his uncle. And Raman understood that more varieties were disappearing and they need to be saved. The Green Revolution in India has led to loss of several traditional sources. He started collecting paddy seeds from different parts of Wayanad from 2000. But in the changing circumstances, he is struggling to cope up with the climate change and seasonal fluctuations. Wayanad was also known as Vayalnad, the land of paddy fields. Of the 164 varieties, the paddy was once grown here, now only 1 or 4 remaining. Another case is tourism. Many developing countries have adopted specific programs and policies to promote the growth of tourism as part of their development strategies. Tourism can contribute to development because it provides employment for a broad range of people and it has potential for strengthening the linkage between the tourist sector and the local food and beverages industries production and supply system. Although tourism seems to be an accelerating force for development, it has negative sides as well. Tourism can have a great impact on the environment and society. Examples of this impact are the loss of valuable farmland and the dilution of local cultures. Wayanad is already witnessing a large-scale conversion of the usage of land from agriculture to tourism. Although the tourism industry is recognized to have much potential for the development and poverty alleviation, community became increasingly concerned with the environment and socio-cultural problems. First of all, a pressure on natural resources emerged with the once mostly at risk of being freshwater, land, and marine resources. Secondly, ecosystems are often damaged by the tourism industry due to the consumption of large amounts of natural resources and the waste and pollution generated by the tourists. There is also demand to study the carrying capacity of the district. Wayanad remains overcrowded with tourists and their vehicles mainly on weekends. The tourism infrastructure development also must on par with normal, genuine requirements of the local community. There are numerous issues yet to discuss with the tourism, but there are some important experiments from the community sides on tourism. One of it is happening in Chegadi, one of the small village which is surrounded by forest and Kabini River on the side. And some of the community members started a new venture on community tourism, and they named the venture Nava Chegadi. Nava is established to ensure food security and economic stability of the producing farmers. The directors, mainly Mr. Jade, he stands for the protection of heritage of Wayanad and against the threat posed by the contemporary resort culture. According to his views, present tools are not suited for the culture of Wayanad, as not provide the people or proper insights on the rich culture, the Wayanadan culture of Ponniah. And thank you.
Thank you very much. Long time ago, we also visit Kerala, so we miss Kerala very much. We hope we can visit again and see you. Yeah. Okay, and we also have invited another friend from India. Unfortunately, Ms. Meenakshi Cooper has family emergency, so she can't join us. We hope in future we will invite her again. And our next speaker will be Professor Suraya Afiff. She is an associate professor at the Department of Anthropology, University of Indonesia. Presently, she is also the chair of the Indonesian Anthropological Association, AAI. Her research applies a political ecology approach that concerns indigenous and local communities' livelihood and their right to access and control land, the forest, and other natural resources that are important for their livelihood. Her research focuses on a range of topics related to land use change, resource conflicts, and grand environmental movements in Indonesia. Please, Professor Afiff.
Thank you, Margaret, for the invitation. And also this is a new time for me to join this group. I think I met Margaret one time in Indonesia. She I attend Professor Malani workshop in Bogor, and Margaret came, so that's why I one time I met Margaret. But the rest of you, this is first time I probably meet you all. So let me share my presentations. So basically, I would like to use hopefully 15 minutes, not more, to say several points that basically I would like to share with you the bigger picture of the state land policy in Indonesia, because this is important to understand what are the most challenging issues in people in rural areas are facing because of this state land policy. So this is the issue that has been occupied by and debating by the civil society movement in Indonesia, environmental movement in Indonesia, indigenous movement in Indonesia, farmers movement in Indonesia, for quite a long time, because this state land policy actually have a lot of negative impact in the rural area, especially in I will show you the impact of the permits that the state has been issued without basically consulting the rural communities. And recently, I also present a joint effort actually between the government, NGOs, academics actually also, and communities to address this problem. This is beginning in 2014. The new government at the time able to or willing to incorporate the NGOs call for a change, some land policy in Indonesia. And of course, it's not an easy task, but I'll show you what are their policy and the challenge a little bit. Okay, so I think in this forum, everybody already aware from the first speaker, this also an issue everywhere where the population in the rural area are declining and urbanization and high. But interestingly, in the time of crisis, every crisis, economic crisis, pandemic crisis, people still, people who lost job in the city will come back to the rural area. But when the growth coming and the economic crisis overcome, then the rural people who are in the rural area becoming to urbanize again. So so this is an issue everywhere. It's not unique to Indonesia, but I just want to basically give you an overview. Although this is not unique everywhere, the people move to the city for various reasons, especially young generations. But in Indonesia also there is a reason why there is not attractive to live in the rural area anymore, because there is very few access to job and a lot of issues and conflict. So the latest census in Indonesia to show that how the farmers on land ownerships actually are, people in the rural area are more and more own land, very small land, compare actually from previous years. So the between 2003 and 2013, the land ownership are declining. So about almost 16%, and more people are landless. Even people who own land, it's very small land. So very in Java, probably small land is still productive, but if you are living outside Java, small land is actually cannot produce as high as if you own land in Java. So this is an issue where people farmers actually lose their access to land from time to time, and there's a couple reasons. One of the reasons it's can be explained in this couple presentations. So land control in Indonesia, basically, it's all land in Indonesia. It's classified in the two categories. What's so-called state forest land. It's cover 66, around 60 and 66% of the total land in Indonesia. And the non-forest is only 34%. And technically, within the state forest, well, from the legal perspective, actually you're not allowed to live, although millions of people live in the state forest, what's so-called state forest area. From the state point of view, it's illegal. This is the biggest issue and that we're facing since the state policy in '67 that the government started to have a basic forest policy. So it's a state claim land, and within the state forest land is actually the state could allocate the land for a lot of categories. So about 25,000 village actually can be identified has been inside the state forest or around state forest land, or 35% of this total village in villages in Indonesia. Now, the state forest land is actually classified for different purposes, and so what are the problem is actually when the state allocate permits to use the land, mostly for more than 3 decades, they give a permits to the corporations. So basically, very few community get permits, meaning that all the community that even live in the state forest, illegal from the government perspective, from the law perspective. So they are subject for basically criminalizations. And this is the issue that civil society has been advocate for long time to actually acknowledge that people has not allowed to have land or access to land, and this is beginning to be basically make them lose more land, and because of that, there is no point to live in the rural area anymore, and that is more urbanization, even stronger because of there is no access or guaranteed access to use the land in the what's so-called state forest area. Now, in the non-forest area, it's also a problem. It's also allocate a lot of this area allocate for oil palm monoculture oil palm plantations. Totally right now, around 15 million area non-forest area are already allocated. Majority for a company, even the smallholder also part of this company. But this is also the other reason that people in the rural area actually lose more land and very few jobs, because there is actually very limited policy that support people live in the rural area. Now, you can imagine, million, thousand of hectares allocated for companies. oil palm companies without, access, actually meaningful access for the people in the rural area. And you can see this, huge area that accessible for oil palm. And investment for oil palm is not just by Indonesians, but also by Malaysian, by Singaporean, including Chinese corporations. So this is not only by Indonesia. This investment also by capital from outside Indonesia, including China. Yeah. So you can see that extractive industry, that this is one example in the West Kalimantan province, how the land are already allocated for a lot of this extractive industry that cause deforestation. And a lot of this result in land conflict. So land conflict, it's spread out and increase all over Indonesia. During the Suharto period government, between 1967 and 1998, basically there is no policy, meaningful policy for rural people in the rural area. They believe that they give a permit to a company, then the people could get a job from this plantation. Of course, we know already, no one can be what they call sejahterah, get wealthy. No rural people get wealthy if you just work in these companies. Yeah. So land conflict become a serious problem in every rural area in Indonesia. And this has been, the Indonesian civil society group and some academics have been advocates since 1990s, actually since the Suharto regime. So until now, this is not yet resolved. Many of this problem has not been resolved. And then not just oil palm that government gave a permit, but also mining company. So this is a picture of the mining company in the one of the province in East Kalimantan, where coal mining company, a lot of coal mining company actually gave a permit by the government. And you can see how people lose land, that villages that next to the mining company, it's actually losing the land. They're facing also problem in water scarcity because you see the more land you dig for coal, the more you lose or have a problem with the water for the agriculture. Yeah. So this is the problem that we are facing now. So it is not surprising that the environmental movement, indigenous movement, and farmers movement trying to actually address this problem by it's various means, right? Since 98, they able to organize farmers and indigenous people communities, because before they not allowed to have their independent organizations. So after the regime, the Suharto regime, actually no longer in power in 1998, then farmers movement began to be formed, and indigenous people movement as well. And these people are relentlessly try to overcome this policy. So in 2012, the Aman is the alliance of the indigenous people movement in Indonesia. Win the constitutional court that say basically that the government has to give back the land that they claim that owned by indigenous people. Of course, you know, it's in the even the court already asked the government to give it back, but the policy or the implementation is very slow. So what the local community actually trying to do is actually reclaiming the land and make a point and make appointment, and this is increase the conflict again, right? Because the policy change is very, very slow since 2012. Now, this is one of the response. The other response is that, okay, then if, you know, the government asks, okay, then we would like to return back the land to the community, then where's the boundaries? So this has been civil society and local community actually work together to establish maps that can show to the government where are their boundaries, so they can argue that, you know, this is the boundaries, and the permits, the plantation permits actually violate the boundaries. And if the government give another permit, they can basically present to the government, this is the boundaries, and we would like to have a compensation, or we would like to oppose the permit and things like that. So practice-level mapping are really one of the tools the Indonesian communities working with the NGOs and, you know, some academics as well, to produce, you know, mapping that to show that where is the boundaries that actually either village boundary or what do you call indigenous people boundaries. Yeah, so that is the second response. Now, the third response is actually it started in 2014 when there is opportunity for the civil society to influence the new presidents at the time. So what they proposed is actually a program what is called the Agrarian Reform Program. So now the Agrarian Reform Program, it come, you know, basically was has been part of the government policy, which is in general give a two different access, what you call access reform, and that could give you what you call land distribution. So if you a village that inside the state forest, so basically the government could release the area to not become a forest again in the village boundaries, and that has to be about government and the local community and the NGO work together, which are the area that has to be released. The other issue of the agrarian reform is actually legalized access. So basically, legalized access is to give more access to the state forest area to a certain community, and this is also under the agrarian reform. But agrarian reform is not just distributed land, you know, land reform, distributed land reform, or access reform, but also help the community to build economic what do you call assistance to the community, so they could actually get benefit, economic benefit from the land. So this is the basic idea. I don't have a time to make a detail, but this is since 2014 has been the policy of the Indonesian government. Now, one of the access reform is called socioforestry. And this is a joint efforts between the Minister of Environment and Forestry, some academics, NGOs, and communities. So the attempt is actually to give a community forest to set up for a certain community or a village forest, so people could ask or could submit basically a requirement for a village forest. Also for plantation, community plantation forests, or other scheme of access. And the targets by 2024 is a 10 million hectare. Of course, this is very slow. Can you see that although it started 2007, but it's not really progressive. And since 2014, the government, because now it's part of the government policy and program, so they began to more and more forest to allocate as a social forestry. So I was just mention, so the social forestry program actually to increase community to get access to the forest, which is from from the 1.7 million to about, the target is to 10 million. I don't know whether they will be able to do that, but that is the targets. So it is actually that has been very beneficial for the community to get this social forestry program scheme. There is a survey that conducted recently to show that how that income increased several times once they join the social forestry scheme. So this is very obvious, that access to land, access to owns land are very crucial in the rural communities. And this has been the problem, I think it's not just Indonesia, probably, in various other countries. But in Indonesia, this is the most long-term issues that, like a lot of civil society has been pressure the government to implement, what you call the access and distributive land reform. So basically, yeah, this is the last slide. So I just want to give offer you what actually the pressing issue of the policy in the rural communities and some of the actions, collaborative action by the government and by the local community and NGO and academics to overcome this issue. So I'm eager to learn whether, how the other region also dealing with this issue. Thank you very much. And we can elaborate later from the Q&A session. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor Afiff. We are very happy to learn that the Indonesian local communities continue to struggle with the new colonial monoculture plantation economy. From our side, Chinese community also struggle to try to change the export-oriented industry. So we don't want to be the world factory anymore, but how to do that? And then I think very important how to make alliance between Chinese and also Indian and also Indonesian rural communities. Thank you very much. And our next speaker will be from Japan, Nogawa Mio. She is a board member and Secretary General of Alternative Peoples Linkage in Asia with 12 years of experience working for APLA social programs in East Timor and Indonesia. Besides the work for APLA, since 2013, she has been visiting Okinawa frequently to take part in anti-US military-based movement, peace movement there. Please, Mio.
Hi, everyone. I'm very honored to be here today and see you all. Today, I'm presenting civil society movements in 3 areas of Japan. So I cannot show overview of Japanese civil society movements, but let me, just show some examples. And 2 of them are kind of peasant movements, and one is related to the indigenous community. So let me share my screen. So before that, let me introduce APLA, that my organization, and the predecessor, JCNC. So in early 1980s, the international value of sugar crashed, causing severe starvation in Negros Island, the so-called Sugar Island in the Philippines. There, the landlords halted sugarcane production and waited for sugar prices to increase. The plantation workers lost their jobs and become unable to buy rice to feed their children. So UNICEF reported that more than 150,000 children were facing starvation like this photo. At the time in Japan, citizen groups concerned with issues of human rights of Filipinos in Japan, and also business advances from Japan to the Philippines, had organized a network named Japan Coalition of Philippine Concerns. They began a relief campaign for the starvation, and this joint campaign bore Japan Committee for Negros Campaign, that is JCNC, to organize emergent aid activities. And JCNC activities initiated to provide starvation relief for the Negros people during the 1980s further evolved to cooperation activities for local self-reliance pursued by sugarcane workers and marginal farmers in Negros. In one sphere of the campaign, the JCNC made the concept of people-to-people trade, P2P trade, and incorporated the Alter Trade Japan, Inc., in cooperation with consumer groups in Japan. In 20 years of businesses, the ATJ expanded the partners of P2P trade to Indonesia, East Timor, Palestine, and other countries. And in 2008, based on JCNC's 20 years experience in Negros, APLA was incorporated to provide a place to exchange experience and cooperate with people in Asia in pursuit of local self-reliance. APLA, beyond the conventional relations of aid, aims to plot the alternative and organize network for the alternatives. Okay, now, and I myself joined APLA in 2008, and since then I've been in charge of social programs in East Timor and Indonesia. So I'm really happy to hear the presentation of Professor Suraya, and want to communicate more. But today I have no time to talk about it. So let me move on introducing 3 rural movements in Japan. Okay, so first, Fukushima. I'm sure that all of you here know about the Great East Japan earthquake and the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear accident on March 11, 2011. It was already 11 years ago, but continued to affect many people. I recommend you to check Fukushima Mieruka Project website, managed by FOE Japan, that's a Japanese NGO. There you can hear voices of the people and find various facts. But today, I'm introducing the small farmers group named Nihonmatsu Organic Agriculture Association. Mr. Shinichi Ouchi, a founding member, and his colleagues have been cultivating the soil without any chemicals for more than 30 years in Nihonmatsu here. But their farmlands also got radioactively contaminated after March 11. It disrupted every effort and work of Mr. Ouch and the members during 30 years. Actually, more than half of consumers canceled the membership of Sanchoku, that means direct delivery from the farm to consumers. Even facing such extreme hardship, they never gave up. They removed radiation-contaminated surface soil, and with the help of some consumers cooperatives and also civil organizations, started to measurement of radioactivity on every crop. At the same time, they started to study hard how to reduce the contamination from their crops. And they also started to wish to generate electricity by themselves. One day, Mr. Ouchi told us that even though we are victims of nuclear accident, but before we remained indifferent about the energy, so that we really want to generate electricity as we produce organic vegetables. So APRA and other groups in Tokyo supported them to learn from the advanced case, and we made the opportunity for them to visit Germany. And after coming back to Fukushima, they continued their case study, and finally in 2018, they made a success of solar sharing system like this photo. That is method of generating electricity on farmland using solar panels mounted to a raised framework with crops growing underneath. They've already harvested soybeans and soba wheat there. Okay, so next about Sanrizuka, Narita. I'm not sure how many of you know about Sanrizuka struggle, but many of you might know Narita International Airport or might landed there if you have visited Japan. I have no time to go into detail, but in 1966, immediately after the announcement by the government of construction plans of new international airport in Sanrizuka, Narita, local farmers formed the Sanrizuka Shibayama United Opposition League against the construction of Narita Airport, also known as Hantai Domei. And for the first year to late 1967, they tried peaceful forms of protest. But when this was ineffective, Hantai Domei grew radical and abandoned the peaceful strategy for more active resistance. And then student activists and labor activists from all over Japan began to take notice and join the protests. Some went so far as to live in Sanrizuka for extended lengths of time, providing free labor and living with local farmers there. For my generation, actually I was born in 1982. So for my generation and the younger one, there's almost no chance to know the true history of Sanrizuka struggle. And some might recognize the name of Sanrizuka, but only as a radical left-wing movement. But for me, thanks to APRA, I met Mr. Tsuneji Ishii, a local farmer from Sanrizuka who joined the struggle when he was young. And during his struggle in 1976, he and his colleagues started Sanrizuka Wanpak Yasai. That is a group for direct deliver organic vegetables to consumers who support their struggle in Narita, Sanrizuka. However, they also faced the difficulties after March 11, 2011, because it was believed that the soil in Narita was also radioactively contaminated. So many of consumers canceled their membership to find safer food. It was a moment that Mr. Ishii made his mind not to produce food for urban consumers anymore, but try to educate people to produce food by themselves. And he started self-sustaining farm, Milpa, named Milpa, using his farmland. So Milpa Milpa prepares a small portion of farm for the members, mainly from the urban city. And Mr. Ishii teaches how to cultivate and produce food, not only techniques, but also philosophy. And Milpa organizes many events for the members, such as harvesting potatoes and having festivals and miso making, for example. And because it's located quite near from the airport, of course, many visitors from abroad drop by Milpa for enjoying the organic farm and enjoying conversation with Mr. Ishii. And he is a peace activist from South Korea. And the couples from Hong Kong, they are farmers. And he's from Canada, and he's an NGO worker who is struggling against land grab. So Milpa is a kind of gateway to the Japanese civil society movement that is really, that based on the organic soil. Okay, because of time, this is last case, Ryukyu, Okinawa. As you might know, Ryukyu was in independent kingdom until 1879. And during the World War II, the people of Okinawa were engulfed in the war's only ground battle on Japanese territory. After the war, Okinawa was placed under the US administration till 1972, when Okinawa reverted to Japan. Actually, Okinawa accounts for only 0.6% of the total land area of Japan, but the 70.3% of exclusive use US military facilities are concentrated in Okinawa. And the existence of the vast US military facilities in the areas impacts the living of the people of Okinawa and also natural environments. In particular, aircraft noise has serious effects on the health of nearby citizens. And during the period from Okinawa's reversion to Japan in 1972 to the end of 2021, there were 826 aircraft-related accidents in Okinawa only. And this is Marine Corps' air station, Futenma, located in the middle of the city. And you see a university and the elementary schools, high schools. So the kids are learning very near from the air station. And this MCAS Futenma claimed as the most dangerous military base in the world. So people of Okinawa has been struggling against such circumstances all the time. I cannot tell each story of struggles in Okinawa, but let me share the story of Henoko. So Henoko is a small village in the northern part of Okinawa Island. And there exists Camp Schwab. This is a US Marine base since 1959. And in 1986, Japan and the US government agreed in relocating MCAS Futenma to Henoko here. So this is a blueprint for the new base. And it is claimed that the relocation aims to reduce the burden of Okinawa. However, constructing a new base in Henoko would never be a solution for the long-lasting problems imposed to Okinawa. In addition, it is so ridiculous to destroy precious and diverse marine ecosystem existing Henoko-Oura Bay. So people of Okinawa showed strong will to oppose construction a new base in Henoko over and over again, such as a local referendum, the governor election, the national elections, legal struggles, and hundreds of assemblies. However, Japanese government never heard the voice of Okinawa and forcibly conducts the construction. That is why people need to sit in protest in front of the gate of Camp Shore and go out to sea. Actually, I'm a member of kayak team since 2014. And before COVID pandemic, I joined the protest 4 or 5 times a year using my holidays. So this is what is going on in Henoko. So still already embankment work is progressing, pouring soil. And yeah, this is what is happening in Henoko. So the mountains is destroying to destroy the ocean. Yeah. So this is also the peaceful action to stop the embankment works. Despite the disparate pressed by civil society, Japanese government spends taxpayer money like water to push for the construction work, even in the midst of pandemic. So it is too sad to see this image. As you see, reclamation work proceeded in the shallow waters of Henoko. This is the latest one. However, the community aspiring peace never gives up. So I really hope that you will stand in solidarity with Okinawa to stop this new construction. So thank you so much. This is my presentation.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, from your presentation, we look into the victims of development in Sanrijika and also Fukushima. However, we also learned how to generate hope in this dilemma. We also learned from the people's trade, not to mention the people's trade between the banana trade between Japan and the Philippines, but also Japan and also Indonesia and East Timor. We hope to learn more from your experience. And one more look, in your presentation, you mentioned the Hong Kong farmers actually are also our friends, Jenny and Ajao. And we also, to have their vegetables every week. Yeah, we hope we can join again. Yeah, we hope. Yeah, and the next presenter will be from the Philippines. Ananeza Aban, or Ajins, works as a senior program officer of the University of the Philippines Center for Integrative and Development Studies program on alternative development. She finished her Master of Community Development from UP Diliman. She co-edited the first volumes of the monographs, Solidarity Through Cross-Border Regionalism, Alternative Practices Across Southeast Asia, and Towards People's Alternative Regionalism, Cases of Alternative Practices in the Philippines, published in 2020. Please, Ajins.
Yeah, good evening, everyone, or maybe good afternoon to some of the participants here. So I'm going to focus more on the Mindanao experience of rural and indigenous communities. Wait. So actually, this is so timely. When I was searching for some case studies or urgent actions and issues that come our way here in in the Philippines, this is what I discovered, no, and which is very urgent. So therefore, this online session that highlights the situation of indigenous communities across Asia is just timely as Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte, through Executive Order 130 or 130, has lifted the 9-year moratorium on new mining permits, which will relieve restrictions against open pit mining. Most of these areas are right on the ancestral domain claims of the indigenous peoples. So may I discuss further and focus further on Mindanao? Because Mindanao, which is the south of the Philippines, has an extensive mineral deposits and is a target of several mining concessions sourced from both foreign and local investments. And these mining sites are the heartland of Lumad. So we call them Lumad in Mindanao, or the indigenous peoples of Mindanao. And these lands, these ancestral domains, are the reasons for their existence. So may I focus further? One of the things that disturb us here in Mindanao definitely is the Tampacan mining project, which is Southeast Asia's largest copper and gold reserve. This Tampacan project has a 5.9 billion US dollars budget. No, that's why it's one of the largest, maybe perhaps in the world, and the largest in Southeast Asia. And it will be operating soon because Duterte has already restored the environmental compliance certificate of the Tampacan mining project as early as May 6, 2019. But this has not gone very publicly, no? Most of the people, especially the activists in the island, has just discovered, let's say, planned some actions, no, to resist this policy. It's a 1,000 hectare mining project that will use the open pit mining method that straddles 3 towns. No, this Tampacan in South Cotabato, Kiblawan in Davao del Sur, and Columbio in Sultan Kudarat. So its mine area is equivalent to a size of 17,000 basketball courts and a depth of 160-story building. So that's how deep and wide this mining exploration and operation would be. The area, which includes 355 hectares of old-growth forest, while these minerals are buried underneath, these are the ancestral domains of the Blaan tribe, and an estimate of 4,000 people, mostly Blaan communities, will be affected directly. With Duterte lifting the mining moratorium, Tampacan mining is among the priority list of 101 mining applications. So this is the picture of the mining site. So this is Tampacan area, the Blaan tribe ancestral domain. This is the base camp, the campsite, and then this is where the mining workers are now constructing the soil traps, no, for erosion, to prevent erosion. While with Duterte's order lifting the mining moratorium, Tampacan mining is among the priority list of 101 mining applications now in the pipeline for approval. Of the 101 shortlisted, 36 miners could already start their development and operations this year. But beyond this list, there are 400, 400 more pending mining permits that needs approval. However, the South Cotabato Environment Code, this is a provincial code of the province of Cotabato, where Tampacan belongs, still halts the Tampacan project as it bans the open pit mining method since 2010. On the other hand, the Philippine Mining Act of 1995 does not prohibit open pit mining. So the tricky part here is that the South Cotabato provincial government is now prepping up to amend the section of the code that states the banning of open pit mining. So once this is done, once the amendment of the code is done, the Tampacan project can proceed. Now let me take off first to what is the real situation of Mindanao and its economy and its people. Mindanao, with its abundant resources, has been a major contributor to the country's productive capacities, supplying 40% of the country's food requirements and 30% of the national food trade. Its mineral sector shares about 25% to the national total. On the agricultural front, the agriculture and industry, or the agri-industry, which is predominantly cash crops like bananas, pineapples, oil palm, and rubber, these are heavily export-oriented industries, which government says holds competitive advantage. But the exploitation of these resources for wealth and income of the few, as reflected in the dominant role of transnational corporation and big local businesses involved in almost all of its various industries, have not benefited the majority of its people. Majority of the people in Mindanao remain at the peripheries of development. So mainly, there are a lot of poor people in the island. Poverty indicators are higher than the national average. So obviously, with an economic growth trajectory focused on export and the market, the central government's development agenda for Mindanao does not address the needs of the people here. Government's sincerity to address the root causes of poverty and inequality is being questioned, as manifested in the perpetual problem of social unrest and rebellion. And then mining, logging, agribusiness. These are the ventures and other foreign corporate ventures. No, these remain a threat to the Lumads and to the Lumads' ancestral domain. Large mining companies in the world invest here. No, so there are a lot of foreign investors here really for mining. On the other hand, about 500,000 hectares of land in the 5 regions of Mindanao are now converted into agro-industrial plantation crops, primarily for the export market. So I'm sure some of you know that we export heavily bananas. No, these are sourced from Mindanao and goes to Japan, China, and even to Saudi Arabia and other countries. So beyond these problems, we see the need, and the people and the communities in the community below actually see the need for alternatives. So I gave you here 3 case studies that briefly discuss about their issues, their daily resistance, and the practices, the alternative practices that they live with, no, in response to all these development projects. Protest actions, collective resistance as an alternative, especially even for the Tampacan communities and the communities of South Cotabato. The Tampacan project clearly does not have a social acceptability. Since the day capitalists expressed their interest to unearth Tampacan, the people have resisted. Some even offered their lives for the struggle. Because we see here in the picture that there are some like coffins, no, being offered to the office of the armed forces because there were some killings that happened before during the height of the Tampacan mining project push of corporations. And then in the picture here, you see this is very recent. The the Catholic, led by the Catholic Church, the Diocese of Marbel, they hold these protest and signature campaigns, against the policy of Duterte, and in order to uphold, to support the Provincial Environment Code of Cotabato. And so far, at least they have gathered 93 signatures to resist the mining venture and uphold the Environment Code. So up to now, the struggle continues in the community. Now, apart from that, we also have some Lumad children and Lumad communities, because of this wanton dispossession of lands and heavy militarization. One of the alternative practices that communities develop there is the Lumad Schools. These are alternative learning, a space for the Lumads fight for land, life, and liberation. To give you a further background, scarcity of basic social services such as health and education for Lumad communities reflects the deficit of state support in the countryside. The lack of education often renders these communities more vulnerable to corporate business interests and promises of development, as seen in the experience with the mining industry. The establishment of alternative tribal schools for the Lumad is an attempt at responding to the incompetence of the state to provide a needs-based, culture-oriented, and liberating education for them, an education to help them develop critical consciousness. Lumad communities used to operate around 219 Lumad schools across Mindanao. So there are a lot of them, with the support of religious, civil society groups and activist organizations, until it was forced to close down due to heavy militarization as part of the government's counterinsurgency program, especially when Duterte declared martial law in Mindanao. So these are pictures of the children in the Bakwit School, in the Lumad Schools of Mindanao. These are all their initiatives together with support groups. The Bakwit School is an alternative learning space, a refuge that moves from one side to another to facilitate the staging of their protest and to ensure the security of participants. So actually, for the information of all, one of the schools, although they just recently packed up, is located in our university in UP Diliman campus, in order to continue the learning processes of these young people. Armed with the spirit to continue learning and oppose the oppression of their communities, these young learners, together with the teachers, parents, and supporters, established the Bakwit School, a refugee classroom that moves from one side to another to facilitate the staging of their protest and to ensure the security of participants. Under the Save Our Schools network, churches, seminaries, universities, and colleges open their doors for this alternative educational program. So Bakwit School as an alternative learning space, stands as testament to the unyielding struggle of the Lumad, not only for education, but also for the ancestral land and to resist the continuing plunder of Mindanao's resources. So these are some of their activities before inside UP campus in Diliman. And this is their moving up ceremony. That's somehow like a graduation ceremony held last year. So the next case that I would like to share is about the land occupation of the Panalsalan Dagubaan Tribal Association. Bukidnon province is home to the Talaandig and Higaonon tribes. The case of Padata tells a story of how they reclaim their ancestral domain. Prior to cultivating and managing hundreds of hectares for their family farms and collective resource managements, theirs is a history of constant tactical negotiations with government agencies, legal actions, protest actions, and everyday resistance to the long-standing landlordism in the province and the eventual corporate capture of ancestral lands by converting them into agribusiness plantations that push them further to marginalization as farm laborers, and then landlessness, food insecurity, and other vulnerabilities. These plantations prefer cash crops such as pineapples, bananas, sugarcane, jatropha for biofuel purposes. So these are some prior to the land occupation that they made. So these are pictures of their protest actions, no, in Mindanao and until in Manila. The height of their struggle was the landmark land occupation of these two former cattle ranches with portions already planted to cash crops. And during the precarious situation, under the vicious motives of the former landlords, a community-based forest management agreement was later awarded to them. Having this as a tenurial instrument, they now maintain some plots for the agricultural productivity and food source. So, sorry. However, since during the time of their continued resistance, protest actions, and legal actions, then dialogues with government, they were able to get a community-based forest management agreement, no? So actually, the government through the Environment Office, no, was really forced to provide because it was really because they are actual occupants in the area, and technically they have no reason to. The government does not have any reason not to provide this forest management agreement. But getting this government forest management agreement is not enough. They have to undergo the rigors of filing their unified claim to the government agency for indigenous peoples as mandated by law. So the law is IPRA, Indigenous Peoples' Rights Act. Before they get that piece of paper as proof of their collective ownership and that of their ancestors. So basically, in order for the what is the problem and the challenge in the Philippines is these indigenous peoples have to acquire or have to struggle further to get the CADT or the Certificate of Ancestral Domain Claim from the government agency, as proof that they are the actual owners and rightful owners of their ancestral communities. But these are too long. These are it takes time for the communities, for the Lumad to go to NCIP to the Office of the Indigenous Peoples Agency, and of course, there's money involved in they need to raise funds in order to conduct all these consultations, etc. So until now, PADATA members still await their certificate of land title, which has taken too long due to the many requirements and processes. However, because they're already there and they've already occupied the land, the advantage is they better enjoy the fruits of their farm labor and have since established a sitio or a small village of their own that is being recognized by the local government or the barangay. And then they also have a primary school already established in their sitio. All this based on and reflects the struggle that they did for their ancestral domain. So this is the school in the top of a hill, and then this is a picture of a ritual of somehow like a thanksgiving to the spirits, to the to the environment, to earth, no? Thanksgiving ritual of the Talandi community in their ancestral domain. And this was just done recently during the lockdown, the COVID-19 lockdown. So for my conclusion, there seems to be minimal change to the Lumad situation from the past to the present regimes. Land and resource grabbing in the name of the market, supplemented by militarization in the countryside, has been part of the historical injustice to the Lumads, who still battle for ownership over their ancestral domain. But when pushed against the wall, the Lumads also fight back. So thank you for listening, and thank you for this good opportunity for my sharing.
Thank you very much. You let us understand more the tribal community resistant to the agribusiness and how they generate hope and in the future. Yeah, thank you very much. And now we have speaker from Sri Lanka. Logeswary V. Ponniah is program coordinator and policy developer at Human Development Organization, Kandy, Sri Lanka. She received a BA in Political Science, Kamaja University, India. She is also a IPMA Sri Lanka board member, steering committee member of Asia Rural Women Coalition, and General Secretary of Women's Solidarity Front. Please, Ponniah.
Thank you for this good opportunity. I'm an activist, more than 20 years in Sri Lanka. Especially, I'm work with all the people, but main focus on plantation community who are bring British from the India more than 200 years ago. So the PP21 Forum on Rural and Indigenous Community Building in Asia, this forum, I like to enlighten my community. Then we go to the poverty is not an accident like slavery and apartheid. It is a man-made and can be removed by the actions and the human beings. I strongly believe this Mandela's quote. This quote from the Mandela is applicable to village and indigenous communities. Also, they built their sustainability. Based on my own experience and learning, rural communities building is empowering marginalized women, minority, Dalits, plantations, and agriculture workers, etc. I am referring to here tea plantation workers as the part of the rural community in our region. Building rural communities mean ensuring social, economic, and political and cultural rights of the plantation workers and also the plantation women workers. Major challenges faced by rural plantation community in Sri Lankan context: livelihood income of the workers because of the globalization and privatization policies. Plantation workers and the community lost their livelihood, resource, and income. Also, wage issues of women workers. Lack of land and land grabbing. People earn their income from natural resource, coast seas and lagoons, and agriculture land will be wiped out of from the system. And the neoliberal economic policies adopted by the governments. Living condition of the plantation community is very poor compared to other sectors. Existing feudal patriarchal system causes to multiple burden of the women. Occupational health hazards and lack of health facilities. Usage of pesticide and weedicide and chemical fertilizers. You may know a lot of plantations, they use more of the profit, lot of pesticides. Exciting the caste system because the caste Indian contents, we are from Indian content, so the caste system also existing. Climate change and deforestation, pollution and loss of biodiversity due to the depend on the environment and resource, land and territories. Then, last 2 years, the COVID pandemic and its fast attack to attention have not only led to the declaration of the global pandemic by the WHO, but the meantime highlight how breakable the health services are and how helpless most vulnerable population in the agriculture field. You can see these are the plantation living standard. These houses are built by British more than 150 years ago. These are the situations. It's like a barrack, two side lined rooms. It's called lined rooms. If you go to the present condition of the plantations, I would like to give us example in the Sri Lankan context. In 1970s, according to the land reform policies, all the plantations were nationalized. Then again in 1990s, plantations were privatized. Based on the maximum profit concept, the plantation natural resources exploited, land grabbed, workers lost their employment, income and welfare services. Lot of young youths and women migrated to the cities and Middle East as well, because they lose their jobs. They need the livelihood, so they going out of to the plantation. Women lost their livelihood opportunities. Child labor is very increased, especially child labor problem in, especially in the plantation. Permanent workers became contractor workers. Ultimately, plantations are abandoned. No proper management and production. Plantations were closed down. So in this globalization process, we have big question in front of us, how to build rural communities for the social change. These are some pictures where I built my community in the plantation areas, the alternative economics and alternative livelihoods. How to deal with these challenges, especially rural community resistance and struggles come from the courage, resilience, and resolved commitment of leaders from the person, agriculture workers, indigenous, their determination to continue even in the face of threats, harassments, and violations of their human rights, are the stories sacrifice and belief in their struggle for women and people's rights, influencing policies, legislations on human rights and governance, gender equality and equity, advocacy and lobby on these issues. It is a very important thing. Women resistance and struggles is the results of the collaborative efforts from the various community organizations and movements working with the various sectors in the country level and the Asia level, sometimes in the international level as well. Civil society building is a crucial strategies of the communities for the strengthened civil society movements in the community to fight for their rights in the community level. These are the some activities we are building. We are organizing our plantation women for the alternative livelihoods. Then we are raising their issues through the community media. Then the child labor, especially child labor issues, lots of children below 18 years, girl child, especially girl childs are they taken, some people urgents are taking to the town side, big business peoples or business areas as a child labor. So the COVID pandemic, we make leaflets and campaign with the policy makers and like-minded people to aware the people, because plantation is very marginalized. Still some, it's not mainstreaming. So the women, especially the women, rural women, we encourage them to decision as a decision makers. So they nearly in our rural areas now more than 54 women's in the local councils, and they are voicing for their women and especially for the marginalized people's problem and voice Then the advocacy work. This is a very important thing because last HDO's history is nearly 30 years. So those 30 years we are struggling for our citizenship issues, especially 2003. We locally we campaign and advocacy and international pressures, and because of that 2003 we got the citizenship for the 300,000 people. So it is a main struggle. Then recently, I told the plantation people are not still mainstreamed because it's a different authority running the plantations. So the health system, you may know everybody here, the Sri Lankan health system is very well in Asia, but the plantation health system running by the management. So as an organization, as an activist, we fighting several years for this mainstreaming or integrate the plantation health system into the nationalized. So recently, after several years struggle, in January, they put a new amendment in the parliament, then agreed to take over all the small dispensaries to the mainstream. So this is not only 1 or 2 days work, it's a long struggle, resistance and lobby and advocacy. So the people, as we have threats and we facing some lot of problems. So everybody, Dr. Nimalka and all the people who are in the civil society level, in the national level, they support us to overcome these issues. But there are a lot of issues in the plantation still remaining, and as well as the rural women, because our budget, the women are mostly important or income earning people to the country. It's a plantation community, the same as the garment sector, the factory workers, the same time the migrant workers. These are the women contributing the local economy. But still their livelihood is not ensured, their living wage is not ensured. These kind of problems are still remaining, especially unorganized sector. People also, especially women, are most contributors for the economy. So these are the things I can, according to the time, I can express. I sent a small presentation to Dr. Margaret. Can you present this after my speech? Thank you for this opportunity.
This song is about rice farming in the village using traditional methods of using cows. The song says the cows help farmers to cultivate land. A good variety of rice seeds should be selected from our own village. After planting rice plants, proper water to be provided and continuous monitoring also necessary. After the harvest, we separate rice using local methods and self-access rice in the local market. The sales money should be saved with mother or women. The money will be useful for the next farming period in future.
Thank you very much. And our last speaker will be from Thailand. Nittaya Earkanna is Director of Inner Mountain People's Education and Culture in Thailand. Please.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nittaya Earkanna. I come from the small indigenous community in Thailand. We call our group as the Hmong Indigenous Group. And I'm from the indigenous small organization. We are working mainly in the northern of Thailand, namely Inter-Mountains People's Education and Culture in Thailand Association. And this organization was founded by the indigenous people, by ourselves, and mostly of the staff. All of the staff, we are indigenous people, and the target area are mainly focused in the northern of Thailand. So it is very good to provide opportunity for me to present some experience in this forum. So let me share my screen. I think the situation in Thailand also quite similar with the indigenous people from other countries, from the last presenters, and it's quite similar, no? If we're talking about the indigenous people, wherever we live, we almost facing the same problem. So here I will show you a little bit background about the indigenous people in Thailand. You can see that in the map from the left hand side, it is there are many colorful there. It reflects about the different indigenous groups who live in Thailand. So now we are more than 45 indigenous groups in Thailand, or more than 60 ethnic group in Thailand, but the 45 groups are self-identified as indigenous people, and more than 4 million indigenous people who are living here. And another map, you can see that this is a lot of green that you see in the northern and in the southern part of Thailand. Mostly of that part are the area that indigenous people we are living there. So you can see that mostly of the area that indigenous people living can be said that it is the area that are very rich of biodiversity if compared to other areas in country. And here, this is the general situation that quite similar with the other countries. The first one is that the loss of identity and culture. This is, I think that the education is, I think, impact a lot to our culture. We don't have rights to learn our culture, our identity, or our history in the school. We are forced to learn something in Bangkok. In the history, we don't need to learn, but we are forced to learn. So that's why we lost a lot of our identity. Other issue is about the ethnic bias. I think that every indigenous people, we are also facing about this. And eventually in this century, still facing a lot of this thing also. And about the discrimination, they are still facing, especially about the policy and laws that still seeing that we are facing about the discrimination a lot according to that. And the other issue is about the accessibility about the quality basis welfare and service, especially about the quality education. Eventually, our country, we are in the institute, we said that all the students have rights to access to school, to education. But mostly of our communities, we are living in the remote area and there are no school there. So mostly of the students, they have to migrate to move to other area in order to access to the school. So there's the cost of traveling, they have to move away from their family. So that's why they had to lost their relationship between the community and with themselves. Other issues about the health service, as we are to access to the health service is quite difficult for us according to the traveling, the language barrier. Yeah, and also some of the traditional knowledge that they are not able to, some traditional knowledge that they are not allowed to use now. And other issue about the electricity, the water, like that, this is quite similar. And the other issue that we're still facing in Thailand is about the personal legal status and the citizenship problem. Right now, approximately about more than 200,000 of peoples, of indigenous people, they are not the Thai citizen, and very difficult to assess because of a lot of corruption in the processes of the implementation. The other issue is about the investment promotion scheme, especially about the economic zone and also the tourism zone area, no? Like the other countries, and the limit access to the natural resources. Later I will present about this issue. The other issue is about the business expansion with the land arable area switcher, and also the other issue is the climate change that impact a lot to our farming cycle and also our livelihood as well. So in my presentation, I was going to present more to focus more about the land and indigenous people, because we are mostly of us, we are living in the forest area, and we are depending a lot on the natural resources and the land. So it's quite difficult for us if we are now facing a lot of problem about the limitation to access this kind of resources. So we can see that mostly of indigenous people territories in the northern of and also western of Thailand occupy over 80% of our biodiversity and risk in the natural resource and biodiversity, as the map that I presented earlier. And our indigenous people, we also have very deep spiritual, cultural, social, and economic connection with our land, territories, and resources. There are some pictures showing about some spiritual ceremony there, and also some risk of the seas, local seas there. However, even though we have done a lot of, contribute to the management of resources of the country, but with the bias of the state, they're still thinking that we are the main cause to for the deforestation. So that's why they issue a lot of law and policies that limit our rights to access to the natural resources. So since 1944 until now, there are, like you can see that there are many laws, and they create a conflict for our indigenous people, especially during the time of the military government. This time more difficult for us because they issue a lot of issue and strictly enforce the use of law in our area. So that's why there are a lot of cases that have been arrested in our community, and also conflicts a lot. Sorry, my presentation is okay. So here you can see that with the strictly enforcement of the laws and policy, a number of indigenous people were arrested, and number of indigenous people community also forced to relocate it. And I think you may heard the case of Tampacan, the conflict in Tampacan, that last year the UNESCO announcement at Tampacan to be the World Heritage of and but actually there are a lot of conflict in that area. Indigenous people dead, no? Because of this case. The community forced to relocate from their territory, which they are living for 100 years ago already, and a lot of conflict in that area. But we don't know why the UNESCO approved on that process, and still conflict a lot in that area. And now many cases, many leaders were arrested in that area also. And many of our land and forest reclaimed and suicide back to the government. And in order to, to plant the tree, to do the reforestation, increase the carbon stock, and to respond to the COP 14-15, that the government had, committed during last year, and they do very strict to our indigenous people government or to our community, and especially for the climate change also. Eventually, the heads of the forest is not the burning is not really the main cause for that, but the government announced the the law not allow us to burn our farming area, so impact a lot to our cultivation system now. And other issues about the situation and the struggle of the COVID-19. For the indigenous people, we also facing a lot of problem on that. The very big one is about the lack access to information, to the right information, because now many information and some fake news like that. So we don't know what news are the fakes, what news are the true. So like people don't know how to protect themselves. They don't. They very scary to take the vaccination like that. And so right now, still some of the indigenous peoples that they're very scared to take the vaccination, and also very high number of the worker age, who might plan to work in the town laid off. And when they come back to the community, they don't have any work and they don't have skill to living in their community also. And also the agricultural product cannot be sold. And as well as the students, we don't have the material or equipment to access to the education, because they have to study in online. And also the inaccessibility to government assistance and the remedies, especially to to get the money that's supported by the government. They have to use the internet or telephone to access to the fund. So mostly of our indigenous leader or community members, we cannot access to this process. And also, yeah, the coronavirus testing, the ATK, equipment, we also very difficult to get that kind of equipment also. And how indigenous people we are doing in order to solve the problem. So there are three main area that we are working together. The first one is to do the capacity building and the community to promote the community management. So from our experience that we are working more than 20 years, we also working in many areas, but right now our focus only on the natural resources management. So now there are more than 100 communities that already initiated to manage their natural resources, and they try to revise the indigenous knowledge and to manage their natural resources, and also to revise the regulation, the local structure, to manage their own natural resources. And also more than 100 communities that have developed their mapping in order to use this kind of document to negotiate with the local government and authorities, and also to conduct the community researches, especially the knowledge on the biodiversity and natural resources management. And in order to do this kind of activities, the very important is to do the capacity building for the leaders. So because we think that are quite long, many centuries, that we are just waiting people from the people out, the help from the people who are from outside, just come to help to work for us. But right now, it is time for us to build the capacity of ourselves in order to analyze the situation, to manage the small project, to solve the problem by ourselves, like that, to implement the activity by ourselves. So the capacity building for the leaders in the community is very, very important. So right now, mostly of the community, they are able to, to initiate to work by themselves, and also involving the indigenous women. Eventually, they are in the decision process, still lack number of the women also, but we are still trying now, and also include the youth, indigenous youth people, you know, to involve in the process, because they are very good in the using of the technology. They are able to support in the community level. And we also promote the indigenous people to, on the food security, on the food sovereignty, and in because we think that in order to be survived, and that the rise especially during the pandemic, the land is very useful for us, because if the community, they are able to access to land and natural resources, they are able to access to the food, and also have security to the food also. So we try to promote them to increase the food security in the community by collecting the local seeds, and also expand the seed to the other communities also. And also to many of the young workers who are laid off and come back to the community, we also try to develop the capacity building for them to have some skill on the produce the local products. For example, the honey and also the handicraft, and also provide the skill for them to use the technology in the online marketing, to access the online marketing also, but still in the process of learning. And the other initiative they are working now is to cooperate with partner organizations and alliance networks, because we know that only working in the local community is not really heard by the government, because we have small community in the community only. So it is very important for us to be cooperate with other partners also. Right now, we are establish the network of indigenous people in Thailand, and this is more than 45 indigenous groups we are together. This established during the year 2007. And in every year, we organize several advocacy activity, and also try to access to the government mechanism to promote the rights of indigenous people and advocacy, and also to present about the fact situation in the local level, and also create the indigenous women network in Thailand, the indigenous youth in Thailand, and also the very important is the youth who are very good in the technology. They are come together and create the indigenous media network. These are very good for us to that they are able to present about the fact story, and also to collaborate with the journalists to present about our issue. And we also established the Council of Indigenous People in Thailand also, and to do the advocacy and follow up and push for the policy and legislation. Of course, there are many legislation, many policies that are negative impact to our livelihood. This we have to very close monitor and pushing for the government to review and change the policy. However, it's quite difficult for us. And right now we are in the process of to propose the draft law on indigenous people, the Council of Indigenous People Act in Thailand. This is in the process of the consideration in the parliament, in the national parliament level. This is very hope that our how, in the coming years, it will be adopted. And also, however, we still facing up many challenges. For example, the lack of legal recognition of the government. Our government, they are, already said that, already denied the indigenous people in Thailand. They said that there's no indigenous people in Thailand. And also, right now they are very strictly to do the to enforce the use of law and policies relation on the conservation forest and wildlife sanctuaries. So this kind of issue very difficult for us, and cost forced eviction, human rights violation also happen a lot, and also many of the competition over the resource and the unsustainable resource extraction. So as the other country, there are many big large-scale plantation, or also the mining, logging, and also big dam, right, that have been tried to develop in the indigenous community without any consent and also participation with indigenous people. Sorry. And there are the recommendation of from ourselves, so that the state should have to recognize the identity of the rights of indigenous people in the line with the intent of the UN Drift, and also respect to the land, especially respect to the land and natural resource rights to according with the indigenous custom and cultural and their sustainable use. State should review and eliminate all laws and policies that conflict with the indigenous lifestyle and also contradict to the Constitution of Thailand also. And also engage indigenous people to full and effective participation in all levels and also in the decision making also. Also coordinate and collaborate across the policy areas and intervention levels grounds at evidence-based research. This is very important because even though we are trying to do the research in the community level by ourselves, but the government always said that it cannot be a reference, because we just do by ourselves. We are not the scientists, we are not the researcher, so they are not recognized our research finding. And the other recommendation is the social protection, sustainable enterprise creation and livelihood generation targeted at indigenous peoples with a view of simultaneous tracking poverty and environment degradation. This is very, very important during the pandemic, especially during the pandemic situation also. And the state must accelerate consideration of the draft law of the Council of Indigenous People of Thailand to ensure it's become a law to protect the rights of and promote the livelihood of indigenous people as quickly as possible. So this is the recommendation for our network in Thailand. Yeah, so this is all my presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And then yeah, same with the cases in Indonesia and also Philippines. The indigenous and also rural communities struggle to fight for the access to land. And I think this is very important, particularly even though those countries has the political independency, but we still to fight for the resources sovereignty, particularly during the pandemic.